Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. If you're new here, I would love for you to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any more of my content and you join the family. And if you are returning, thank you guys so much for the love and support. So in today's video, we have an interesting topic, one that most of us as Christians have or will go through at some point in our lives, but we don't often see the beauty of it, and that is the season of isolation. So we're going to dive deep into that today, and my prayer is that at the end of this video we feel more encouraged to see this season as something beautiful and powerful and impactful, and not something that is negative. So when we look at the season of isolation, we already know it has to do with really losing a lot of friendships, relationships, sometimes just losing a lot of things, and you're sort of in this very vulnerable state where you're all by yourself. You only have yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your past, your future, and God. That is all you have. And so you're removed from the noise and brought into the silence. And God is in the silence. He's not in the noise. When God wants to use anybody, we can see that throughout the Bible, He first isolates them, and then in silence they're able to be impactful. They're able to hear from God clearly. They're able to do so much because they're not distracted by worldly things. They're not distracted by people's opinion, what people are doing, what the next trend is. No, the season of isolation is really that season where God is pruning you, and that is why a lot of us see it as a negative thing, because of the growing pains, because of the loneliness. Sometimes, let's be honest, you feel so lonely, you feel like sometimes God is silent, sometimes you feel like, why am I even in this situation? But trust me, majority of people who are something in this world, majority of people who are walking in their purpose-driven life had to go through this season of isolation. I'm going to give myself as an example, of course, because I feel like in my young years of living, I have gone through quite a bit with God, and that's what makes this journey of Christianity, this journey with God so beautiful, is every season you get closer with Him and you learn something new. So there was a point in my life where I had to go through this season of isolation, and I'm going to tell you this for free. It was probably the toughest season of my life. It still is one of the toughest seasons of my life, because could you imagine being in a country, a foreign country, without your parents, without your family, and you're sort of literally on your own, besides maybe some colleagues here and there and maybe some church members. You're literally on your own. The only thing you have is yourself and God. And that's where I found myself. And I remember there were so many moments where I would go so deep into my thoughts. I would get so deep into why things didn't work out the way I thought that they would. But during that time, and I can say it now, and as I'm thinking about it, it was such a beautiful experience, because I got to understand that God is in the silence. No distractions. God is in the silence. He's not in the noise. And there were so many beautiful moments I remember where I'd come back from work and I would be walking to my apartment all by myself. I would see people like hanging out and just living life, and I was literally in that season where like I'm talking to God as I'm walking to my apartment. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're talking to God as you're doing your everyday life, because that's all that you have. And so in that time, it was really so painful for me. There were moments that I was so down. What is so beautiful as well about the season of isolation is once you get out of it, your relationship with God can never be the same again. And this reminds me of Luke 5 verse 16, where you can see Jesus usually withdrawing to go and pray by himself in isolation, in silence. And even the popular scripture where God says, "Be still and know that I am God." Everything has to happen in silence. Everything has to happen away from the distraction, away from the noise. And that is what is beautiful about the season of isolation. And that is why you might have to go through the season of isolation. Not that God has neglected you, but that God sees the strategy in this, that He knows you're going to come out of this way stronger. And you know, I gave you guys the example of my season of isolation, and I can say that in a video, but when you actually go through it, it's something completely different. You know, the pain, the anxiety and worry of the future, the loneliness, is on a different level. And I'm just sharing this because I know that many people don't always talk about it. But the season of isolation comes with loneliness, and as humans, of course, we want that physical interaction with people. But when you can't get that, sometimes you just have to hold on to God. The season of isolation is where you can find your identity, your vision, your purpose. God can show you that because you're only focusing solely on Him. There are no distractions. You're not thinking about, okay, this weekend I'm going to travel, this weekend I'm going to see this friend. You're literally just you and God, and that is where God can show you who you are. That is where God can show you what you need to do. It is in those moments of desperation, those moments of quietness, stillness, those moments of loneliness is when God shows up. And when you're in your own time, in that season of quietness and stillness, I think it's really the time that you start to reflect on a lot of stuff because you have time, right? And if we look at the story of Joseph, he spent many years of isolation without people, without his family, before he became the leader of Egypt. So God prepares us in those quiet moments. God prepares us when we're not focused on ourselves, when we're not focused on what we need to do, who we need to see, what the next plan is. And I think the story of Joseph is beautiful because he's a man that was just an average guy. You know, if we look at him in today's society, he was just an average guy. But he became such a powerful man in the end because he allowed God to use him and he didn't question God too much. And I think that is one thing that we need to avoid in this season of isolation is questioning God too much. Lord, why is this happening? So many questions that we might not get the answers to, but that is part of life. That is part of life. Even Jesus told us that He has overcome the world, but we will go through trying times as Christians. And the season of isolation is not a time to question God, to feel bad for yourself, to think, okay, I'm just gonna stop praying, I'm just gonna continue now my own thing because God is not showing up for me the way He should. No. When you come out of the season of isolation, I can promise you this because I'm a testament of this, you guys. When you come out of the season of isolation, your mindset is different. The way you see life is different. The way you see God is different. The way you move is different. Your spiritual ranking is different. And so in this time, don't think that God is not with you. Don't think that God has forsaken you. God has not. In fact, God sees this as an opportunity to get closer to you. And you guys know that God is a jealous God. And sometimes, because of our own stubbornness, because of our own plans, because of our own arrogance and thinking that we can do this life thing on our own, when you have a special calling on your life, sometimes God has to get to you even though it's gonna hurt. And that was my case. So I was just living life. I was like, man, I've got this, like the Lord is with me, but I can still do things on my own, you know? And when I lost friendships, when I lost relationships, when I lost literally almost everything, the only thing I had was a roof over my head, food on the table, and a job. That's when I knew that the arrogance was just, why? Literally me breathing, you breathing is because of God. And getting to that point that you literally surrender everything to God, you're not going to be the same. I'm not the same person I was 5, 4, 3, 2 years ago, even last week. I'm constantly changing, and I always see the season of isolation as a beautiful season because you're not going to be the same person again. Your outlook on things is going to be different. How God can use you is going to be different. The type of new people that you surround yourself with are going to be different. So see the beauty in isolation. Embrace it. It's difficult, it's not easy, but it's a beautiful opportunity to reflect. It's a way of getting deeper with God. It's a way of understanding your purpose, deepening your faith, and it really equips us for the things that God has for us, because for us to get to the next season of our lives, God has to trust us that we're able to get there and that we're able to maintain the blessings that God is going to bring, the voice that God is going to give us. Because if we are not ready, then God cannot use us in a big way that He wants to. And one thing I know, and one thing I'm certain about, is that God cannot bring you into a season of isolation if there's not something bigger coming your way. So that should really encourage you, and it encouraged me for a long time, you know, when I was going through that season. And it's a beautiful thing to know that God has something bigger for you, but you have to go through certain steps, certain pruning for a bigger and better thing ahead. So I hope you're encouraged by this video, and if you're going through this season of isolation, just know that you're not alone. God is literally right there with you. Thank you so much for watching. watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe to this channel. And I'll be happy to see you in my next video. Bye guys.